I hate feudalism. If you had me for the last section, we talked about the structure of feudalism, lords and vassals and kings and serfs and all that. Today I'm just going to be talking about why I do not like feudalism. In fact, I think it's a terrible, horrifying idea. And it's one of those ideas that stuck around because there's a lot of aspects of feudalism that we still do. If you've had me for my class where I talk about metal, I like metal in proportion to how much I dislike feudalism, which is a lot. Well, what is feudalism? Okay, we talked about this a lot from last time, but feudalism is basically an arrangement of loyalty for skills. You give someone above you your loyalty, and they provide you with some kind of protection. That protection could be military or it could be some kind of land. It is often just an armed force protecting you is what that means. So in terms of like a peasant or a serf, you are protected by the knights and other warriors on a piece of land, and the king's responsibility is to protect you. You, in return, owe that king some kind of a service. This is basically how the mob works. So if you're familiar with the mob, it's the mob. I have some major problems with feudalism. I'm going to go over a lot of them today, but one of them is that it encourages people to just obey their leader and not really think or work for themselves. If there's no reason to develop any skills, because I can just be loyal and get ahead, or I'm just born into the right family and I just get ahead, or I marry into the right family and get ahead. The marrying part doesn't usually happen too often in this feudal system because you're only marrying people generally within your own socioeconomic class. But still, what is the purpose in trying to better my skills? Power is mostly passed through families, maybe friends, regardless of skills or abilities, meaning that progress is stalled by a bunch of milquetoast yes men, all nodding and waiting for a reward from a leader that they are tied to by a relationship. But that relationship is all about loyalty. It's not about, can you actually do the job I'm asking you to do? Or do your skills benefit me in some way? It's, oh no, you're just in charge because you were next, or because you had the right connections, or because you knew the right people. Loyalty is rewarded over skills or knowledge or ability. People get rewarded for who they know, not what they know. Another major problem with this system is that fighting or violence or doing some kind of warfare, that's the only way you can really get rewarded, as there isn't really a way to do other ideas because power is enforced with violence. This is why we're talking about like knights and things like that. You are knighted into a warrior dynamic. You're not like elevated into a position where you're a scholar or a doctor or something. Most of the time it is based on how hard can you swing that sword. I usually ask this next question in my classes of, why am I here right now? And a lot of times students don't know like how their teachers got there, but when I'm teaching someone, they're paying me to use my skills to develop the skills of the students. The idea being that if the student already knew how to do something, they probably wouldn't be here. And if you're not going to pay me, I'm not going to show up to work. That's kind of how that works. I'm not here because I'm loyal to someone. I'm here because a paycheck covers my rent. But granted, we can make a relationship beyond that, but I've definitely worked at jobs where they just stopped paying me and I just stopped going to work. It happens. I'm not working for you for free just because of some kind of loyalty issue. Sometimes in history we talk about the rule of law. There isn't a lot of that in feudal Europe. Rule is mostly through violence and fear, as there are fewer options to motivate people. This is a very generalized question, but why do you do anything? A lot of times I ask students this question, and I tell them, you're here in this classroom to build skills to help you as a person do what you want to do in life. You are building yourself up. You can then use your skills to get what you want. I use my skills as a teacher to earn money teaching people information like I'm literally doing right now. Feudalism, since it rewards loyalty, the skills don't matter as much unless they support that loyalty. That's why those skills based on violence are really popular, because often violence is easier than designing something like a treaty or implementing a tax law or reforming a healthcare system. It's easier to just go violence. This is also sort of getting into and like infantilizing of people, where you're just saying, well, I'm not going to bother to explain my reasoning to you because you probably won't understand it, which is also not a great relationship between the governing and the governed, when the person in charge just assumes you're too dumb to understand something. And it's not like the person in charge got elected anyway. So, and if they control the army and everything is enforced with violence, yeah, it's not great. There's this underlying attitude in feudalism that gaining skills is too difficult or it's not worth it, especially when a path to power can just go with the loyalty route. There aren't a lot of laws in feudal Europe, or at least laws that are written down or codified. There's no real way to keep records, and it's extremely limited in terms of people's options. There's also this idea that I talk about a lot in my classes of humans like easy. And it's just honestly easier to hire somebody that you know. When you've hired somebody that you know, or you've got like some sort of familial connection with them, it means it's much harder to discipline them or correct them when they mess up, because you have this underlying relationship that goes beyond just an economic exchange. If I order a pizza from somewhere and they mess it up, I might order from them again, but I probably won't, because I don't have any other relationship with them aside from I gave you money, you didn't do the product correctly, so I'm not going to do that anymore. And because I have a lot of options for pizza, I'll just get pizza from somewhere else. But if it's just there is only one place that does pizza, and their model for you liking their pizza is that you're loyal to them, or like you owe them some kind of service, or they have this pizza army that protects my apartment, I can't really complain too much about the quality of the pizza because they have so much more power than I do in that scenario. And there aren't really any other options. So you give someone a task and they don't do it correctly, or they mess it up, or they do it wrong, or whatever. You're more likely to look the other way until that becomes a huge problem. And even then, you're probably not going to want to upset that too much, or maybe revoke that person's privileges, because they are your friends or your family. You are less likely to want to correct them or to fire them if they have that connection to you. And look, I get it, people in medieval Europe. It's difficult to build skills when almost no one can read and you don't have access to books. It's difficult to learn things outside of your just environment. I understand. They can't build skills and they kind of have to do loyalty because other options don't really exist. And if the skills option isn't being supported and loyalty is easier anyway, I get the part where you're just going, well, humans like easy, so I'll just do the easier option. Another problem with feudalism is that it actually seems like kind of a good idea because it's easy and it rewards people. Hey, I'm knighting you. You did a good job. Now you are a knight. The loyal should be rewarded. Okay. And those brave or strong or mighty or courageous should get rewards. Yes, those are helpful qualities. Maybe not all the times helpful when you're trying to establish a tax code or a legal system, but okay, if you live in a world of violence, I get it. Those are helpful traits. But that's not necessarily a reason to base your entire government around that concept. Feudalism looks cool. Look at this knight. I'm holding a knight right here. Look at this knight. It looks pretty cool. Like, yeah, I get it. And there's a direct reward. There's a whole ceremony. The sword comes down and dubs you and everything. But if the reward is for loyalty and not skills, those skills don't develop. The other issue is you're getting friends, not employees or workers or allies. You're getting a bunch of yes men, people that will not jeopardize their friend or relationship with you because they don't want you to see them as disloyal and pick someone else. That's a problem, because now you're not having someone work for you because of their skills. You're just having them as a friend. I have plenty of friends, but they don't necessarily know how to do every job. My friend Brian is a stand-up comedian, and he works at like an English department at a college. I am not going to hire him to do brain surgery on me if I needed brain surgery, because he doesn't know anything about brain surgery. Granted, he's a friend of mine, and I've known him for over 30 years, but I'm not going to give him a scalpel and go, get to it. I'm going to hire someone, a doctor, hopefully, with skills in that situation, and then pay them with money that I got from using my skills as a teacher. So, fine, great. But if no one has a skill base, you're just going off of loyalty. I guess I'd have a friend do it because it's a better idea than just going up to some random stranger. At least I know the person, but that doesn't mean that they're automatically a doctor. This gets into my next point. Fame, it doesn't make you smart. People think fame does make you an expert in any subject. I'm going to get demonetized for singing the fame theme, so I'm going to stop that. But yes, fame. It makes people maybe think that you know how to do something because you're famous, but it doesn't actually convey that sort of knowledge or skill or training. Here is a picture of Ja Rule and the guy from Magnesis who started the Fire Festival, if you're familiar with that. Here they are on Fox Business talking about the 2016 election. Why are they there? Oh, because Ja Rule is a famous rapper and the Magnesis guy is doing the Fire Fest with Ja Rule because fame. It's going to be really funny when I find out that Ja Rule has like a master's degree or is like a PhD in political theory or something like that. It's going to be really funny when that happens. But until it does, Ja Rule, I'm not saying you're unqualified. I kind of am saying that. I'm saying that a lot of other people are more qualified in this situation. I also totally understand needing to do feudalism. To be fair, there are no other real systems of control in medieval Europe, so this must be good, right? I mean, they kept doing it. They did it for hundreds of years, 1,000 years. They can't have been wrong, right? All these kings and queens and princes and princesses and dukes and such. Oh, they must have been doing something right, otherwise they wouldn't have kept doing it. Right, I get that, but doing the wrong thing for a long time doesn't just make it the correct thing to do. Slavery, racism, Jim Crow laws, feudalism. Oh, we did all these things for a long time. They must have been a good idea. No, they were not. You didn't have other options. You didn't think to do that, or you didn't pursue other avenues. You just did these awful things just because it was like, hey, we were doing these for a long time. Well, can we just stop? Maybe we find something better. Oh, but we've been doing this for a long time. I'd hate to be disloyal to this thing that I've been supporting for a long time. Really? Feudalism is exceptionally difficult to do long term. It can work short term, which is also not helping because you see something working in the short term and you just sort of assume it'll work in the long term. That's also not a thing that really happens all the time either. But let's talk about this in terms of a big giant diagram that I'm going to just scooch over a little bit and the diagram will just appear over here somewhere. In terms of land use or protecting land, feudalism works fine at first. But as people die and that power is passed down through loyalty to a king, people are oftentimes loyal to their families. They will pick family members to take up these reins of power. Let's look at a drawing. This is a drawing that's going to go over here. A super confusing drawing. All right, so in this drawing, I want you to think about where you might actually live. In this scenario, you have, I made it a big rectangle and I used right angles because it was easier than drawing a bunch of squiggles. But here, we have the king. The king rules the whole shape. Inside, we have the king has said, hey, I'm going to split this big piece of land up into two smaller pieces, giving one to person A and the other to Lord Albert, who I've labeled with an A. Lord Albert splits that land up into two pieces. He gives three pieces. And he says, this is too much to manage. I'll have it split up into three. Lord Bonnie is going to be one of the people operating in part 3, or in the part B. So below that, you have Lord Conrad. Lord Conrad has said, oh my gosh, I've got to rule this area. I'm going to split it up amongst a couple of people that I know, one of those people being Lord Dennis. Okay, who is Lord Dennis's boss? Because is it Lord Conrad, who gave Lord Dennis the land? Is it Lord Bonnie? Because Lord Bonnie owns all of Lord Conrad's land, and all of Lord Dennis's land is inside of Lord Conrad's land, which is inside of Lord Bonnie's land, which is also inside of Lord Albert's land, which is also run by the king. So who makes the call? Can Lord Albert fire Lord Conrad and then someone else come in and take Lord Conrad's position and then fire Lord Dennis and put someone else in there? Yes. Because this is all based on loyalty, not necessarily based on skills. Also, let's say Lord Bonnie dies. All right, does Lord Albert pick someone new, or does Lord Conrad get her land, or what happens with all this? You don't have this sense of who actually owns what, who is in charge of administering what, because honestly, the king owns the whole thing, but this is an administrative problem that's now tied up into interpersonal relationships, which can sour, which can be modified by something like a marriage or a bunch of deaths. It's also the Middle Ages, so if you're talking about a bunch of deaths, you get a lot of those. Also, these people, since they're usually in a military capacity, are oftentimes on a battlefield. If you look at something like the battles of Crécy and Agincourt and things like that, you have people that march out in a battle and 18 princes of the blood will die, which are people that are going to inherit some land of the king. Well, now who gets that land? It just becomes a huge, giant, confusing mess. Feudalism and those ideas behind it are still here. I would like you, and you can do this in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, I would like you to name 2 examples of feudalism still existing in our society today. I don't need you to go, oh, well, England has a queen. No. I'm looking for something that's more of a cultural attitude, or a feeling, or something that's a little bit less overt than, there's a Queen of England. Give me something a little more meatier than that. Yes, obviously there's a Queen of England, but she doesn't run England. Anyway, I hope you had a super awesome fun time today. I'm now irritated with feudalism, so I'm going to go outside and run around to burn off all my disliking feudalism energy, and I hope you have a great day. Bye!